I'm Mike Barasch, managing partner of Barasch McGarry, and I'm thrilled this morning to have over 200 FDNY retirees or longtime firefighters joining us for this webinar. And we're going to be covering a lot of ground here. I'm thrilled, though, that with me today is Deputy Chief Retired Richie Allies. Richie. And my partner, Lee London, is with us. And my associates, Jennifer Jimenez and James Steiner. So look, this is for FDNY retirees. So 90% of the information that we're going to be giving out is for you. But I would be remiss if I didn't realize that so many of you know non-responders. So we will occasionally touch on some things, especially the July 29th deadline that I'm hoping you will share with your non-responder friends who you know were there. And most importantly, to the widows and widowers, the family members who passed away from 9/11 illnesses. You're going to be hearing us talk about this July 29th deadline, and we really need you to help us spread the word. So we're going to start this morning with a short little video of a presentation we did at the Borough of Manhattan Community College when people actually got together. Remember that time? Not just doing it on Zoom. And we were honored that Senator Gillibrand was there. John Stewart, our hero, who got Congress and shamed Congress into passing this permanent legislation. And then as soon as that video is over, we're going to go into the Victim Compensation Fund. We're going to discuss how this affects the health program and how they work together, and also how it sadly, but thankfully, helps family members who lose their loved ones from 9/11 illnesses.
The first thing that I hear from the non-first responder community in Lower Manhattan is, look, I'm sick, but I don't deserve anything. I'm not a first responder. I just lived here. I just studied here. I just went to school here. I just raised a family here. Your presence here was an act of courage and resilience. The first responders, I'm in awe. But I also am in great awe of those who came back to a war-torn neighborhood that was clearly toxic. We knew it, but you stayed anyway, and you allowed this area to grow and to become the hub. But it's your courage and your resilience that brought this place back. So please, I urge you, access what you are owed.
Over the last decade, we have all fought very hard so that everyone has access to the health care that they need. It is very important that every community member who lived anywhere south of Houston understands that you are covered. You are part of the group of people that have guaranteed health care if you have a 9/11 related disease.
I was on my way to work when the first plane hit. I was working for Goldman Sachs. I actually worked for them for a total of 21 years. I always thought that those programs were geared for the firemen and the police officers, but I'm one of the victims of that.
So we have taken on, with all of these advocates here, the task of trying to get everyone to understand that they have rights, and it is imperative that they sign up.
One of the really surprising things about our research is that an event in 2001 can continue to have echoes 17 and 18 years later, such that it is as though never smokers are smoking 2 packs a day.
My law firm represents over 15,000 people in the 9/11 community. And the majority right now are first responders, but every single day we hear from more and more survivors because we're doing this outreach. Basically, to be entitled to compensation, you need to prove that you were below Canal Street or on the Fresh Kills landfill, either caught in the dust cloud on 9/11 or for 24 hours during the month of September 2001, or for 80 hours, which is just 2 full work weeks between 9/11 and May 30th of 2002. And you need to get 2 people to sign an affidavit attesting to the fact that I saw him. I worked next to Joe.
I went to school next to Francis. That's all it takes. There's a reason why my firm takes all this so personally. I have 6 young people who work for me who have lost a parent or a spouse as a result of World Trade Center toxins. 9 people in my law firm, including me, are cancer survivors. The information you get from us is going to be compassionate, and it's our pleasure to help you.
That video is obviously trying to get the word out to the non-responders that they have the same rights as the firefighters and police officers whose unions have done such a great job in educating their members about the rights that they are entitled to. And again, as I said in my earlier remarks, I'm hoping that all of you who know neighbors and colleagues who may have been office workers or students or teachers downtown, make sure that they sign up as well. Chief Allies, can you please tell us a little bit, I mean, for the firefighters, they all are, it's the easiest thing in the world for an active firefighter to prove that they were in the exposure zone. Will you explain why?
Okay, so there's 2 types of FDNY is in the health program, and one is anybody that was active on September 11th of 2001. And through the luck of the diligence in the fire department, it was all about payroll. So there's a notice of participation on file for each one of those members because the timekeeping at the time, you had to be somewhere. So either you were at the pile, or you were in the firehouse, or you were on medical leave, or you were on vacation or on terminal leave. That proves your presence. So that's easy. For our retirees who were, asked to come by the fire department, remember they had a total recall of the job. Those members that came and volunteered and spent time have to have 2 affidavits. So that's 2 eyewitnesses to attest to the dates that they were there. And they don't have to be FDNYs. It could be a police officer, it could be a friend, anybody that they were with that can attest to their presence there.
Yeah, thanks, Richie. And you know what? Truthfully, the Victim Compensation Fund and the health program, they're not looking to jam you up and say, oh, that's not good enough evidence. When it comes to the firefighters, there's almost a presumption that you were there, certainly if you were active. And listen, they know with 343 guys missing, that anybody who was within driving distance came to help out on the bucket brigade. And if they were an older guy just handing out water bottles, I mean, all of you were there. But I do want to make sure you understand that if you were retired before 9/11, you must provide these affidavits. So moving on, many of you have heard me say this before. We represented NYPD Detective James Zedroga. And Jimmy died at the age of 34 from pulmonary fibrosis. They did an autopsy, and they found in his lung tissue ground glass, asbestos, chromium, lead, benzene. These are all known carcinogens that gave the doctors at BHS and at NIOSH the evidence that was needed to link, as you can see here, 68 cancers and many non-cancers. You heard Dr. Wyden, who we all love, talking about this toxic dust. Lee London, would you please take us through some of the more common illnesses that the 9/11 community is facing right now?
Sure, and I just want to thank everyone for logging on today, just because this is very important. There's an upcoming deadline, which we'll speak about later. But getting into the conditions and the conditions for active FDNY guys, volunteers during the time, you have to protect yourself. Skin cancer is the #1 condition we get calls about today. Anytime I speak to someone, I go to your local dermatologist because they're not checking and giving you a full body skin check at the health program. You have to go to your local dermatologist, get a full body skin check, and bring those results to 9 Metro Tech, the health program, to get certified for these conditions. But I'm telling you, it takes that long to develop. So we're trying to get through the misconception that many people have of, oh, they say I lie out in the sun too much, or, oh, my family said it's because my brother and dad had prostate cancer. It's a presumption that if you were in the zone, it was caused by your 9/11 toxins. And when I say presumption, meaning you don't have to show the causation. If you were there during the exposure and you were diagnosed with the cancer, it is caused by your 9/11 exposure. Now, this isn't just the cancer fund. The World Trade Center Health Program treats for mental conditions, PTSD. It's an unbelievable program. But for the Victim Compensation Fund, they only compensate for physical conditions. And many of you suffer from the GERD, respiratory conditions, asthma. It might start off as a small cough 5 years ago, but it can grow into COPD, and then it can grow into sarcoidosis. So you have to make sure you protect yourself and start this process when you're healthy, and not, God forbid, you get that, oh my God moment, and now you want to move forward.
Chief Allies, would you, there's a story that I've heard you tell before at firefighter retiree meetings about skin cancer, and you can talk about it personally as well.
Yeah, this is the silent illness, because the World Trade Center Health Program doesn't screen for it, and they don't screen for it because they obviously would not have the financial means to have a dermatologist on staff at all of the World Trade Center Health Programs, but the Victim Compensation Fund does compensate for it, as Lee said. So the air down at Ground Zero, turns out the pH of the air was the same as Drano. So if you were using Drano in the sink and got some on your hands, you'd wash it off, no problem. But in those early months, it was very warm. Actually, it was the entire period was warm. It was an exceptionally warm winter. But the fine particles get on your body and can get in and cause non-melanoma, basal cell, and squamous cell, which is extremely common, and then melanoma skin cancer, which is the more aggressive form. We had a member of our department, a chief, who was in his mid-50s, great shape, runs marathons, had no conditions whatsoever, developed a rash on his arm. So he figured, hey, you know what? This is a time to go to the dermatologist. So he goes, gets a body checkup. The rash, nothing to worry about, but the doctor noticed the discoloration on one of his fingernails. He didn't like, went in, did a biopsy. The biopsy came back. Not only was it skin cancer, but it was melanoma, the most aggressive form. They had to cut the tip of his finger off. He had to undergo some chemo, but it's a success story. Had he not done that, the doctors say that the cancer cells could have gotten into his lymph node system and then popped out, and I might be telling a different story. Myself, I'm a skin cancer survivor. In 2010, I got picked up. Coincidentally, it just happened to be a World Trade Center Health doctor that happened to notice something on my neck that I had seen. I didn't think it was anything, and said, you know what, I'd get that checked out. And I did, and that was my first visit to the dermatologist, and lo and behold, turned out to be skin cancer. So, 14 stitches later, again, a success story. Not normally a life-threatening illness, left unchecked, like almost everything, it can be.
If I ever get skin cancer, because we're only 2 blocks from Ground Zero, the presumption is that it was caused by the toxins. It doesn't matter that my mother had skin cancer or my father had it, or that I spent so much time at the beach, baking there. They presume that it was caused by the toxins because this air was so dangerous. All right, so you heard me, and Senator Gillibrand was talking about this. One of our our viewers today asked, why isn't Western Brooklyn covered? Certainly, the toxic dust was all over Jersey City, Western Brooklyn, uptown, it was everywhere. But when we negotiated this in Congress, there were compromises made. And the compromise ended up being that if you want compensation, you have to have been below Canal Street on the island of Manhattan, or at the Fresh Kills landfill, or on any of the debris removal routes, or at any of the morgues. Lee, am I missing any of the places?
Nope, just Pentagon.
Oh, Pentagon, of course. We'll touch base because I'm sure a lot of you are vets who have friends who were sick as a result of the Pentagon. But they should know they're entitled to the same compensation, but they had to have been there. When is it, Lee? Between 9/11 and November
14th.
November 14th, and then they get the same presumptions because they were exposed to the same carcinogens in the jet fuel that kept the fires at the Pentagon burning for all that time. So I want to point out something on the right side of this screen here, and that is that for those of you, again, for the non-responders that you may know, while 80% of the firefighters and cops are in the health program, only 7% of civilians have enrolled so far. I mean, that's truly shocking. And the only explanation, because let's face it, they were breathing the same toxins, they're coming down with the same illnesses, The only reason they haven't enrolled is because they just don't know about it. So please, again, that's what our theme is. Help us spread the word. James, would you tell everybody a little bit about the deadlines and most importantly, about this deadline extension that the special master has made?
Absolutely. And good morning, everyone. And that's why it's so important that we're asking you to spread the word. And that's because there is a deadline extension that was made, and it is set to expire on July 29th of 2021. And historically, when it comes to the September 11th Victim Compensation Fund, a person had 2 years to register with the VCF, and that 2-year clock began to tick on the date that they were certified with a 9/11 related illness, or in the case of an individual who passed away, on the date of death. And what's interesting for members of the FDNY, such as yourself, is that many of you treated at BHS or in the World Trade Center Health Program in one way or another when the program first opened. And you may have actually been certified for illnesses that you were not actually informed of. Things that Lee mentioned, like the non-cancerous conditions like COPD, asthma, sleep apnea. If they have already been certified by BHS, that means your deadline to register with the VCF is actually July 29th of 2021. So historically, your deadline actually would have been expired, but the special master of the VCF recognized that so many people, such as yourself, who may have already been certified, have lost their right to file a claim. So she extended the deadline until July 29th, 2021. So spread the word. We want to make sure you are registered. And I know when you speak to a lot of members from the FDNY, a lot of guys tell me, well, you know what, this claim isn't even for me. I'm doing this for my family. One of the great things about registering now is that by registering, you've actually preserved the right for your family to make the claim on your behalf if, God forbid, something should happen to you.
So in other words, you should register with the Victim Compensation Fund, even if you're currently healthy.
Again, another thing for FDNY guys is that they don't realize this is a national program. So it's in all 50 states. So you can transfer back and forth. If you're in Florida, what the federal government does in the 49 states outside of New York is it contracts with an insurance company called Logistics Health Insurance. That company contracts with various medical facilities in all of the other states that they designate as World Trade Center Health Program facilities. And then, members can go there. For the snowbirds, most that I speak to in police and fire, New York is the best. There's no question about it. LHI is as good as it can be. It varies state to state. The ideal is always, if you're a snowbird, to time your treatment and your annual medical exam with your stay in New York. But, eventually snowbirds relocate, or people just, retire and relocate to another part of the country. Then you just transfer, and hopefully you have a good clinic where you are.
And Lee, can you please tell us the importance of how it affects a Victim Compensation Fund award when the FDNY finds someone disabled years later and reclassifies their pension as a World Trade Center related illness or disability?
Sure. And that's an amazing benefit that the FDNY offers, because an amazing part about the Victim Compensation Fund and the benefits that we can make is a loss of earnings claim. But if you are on the job, and I spoke to you in 2015 and you had asthma, and then you get an award in 2015, as you can tell, that the non-economic loss for pain and suffering is a portion of an award. And those can range from $20,000 to $90,000 for non-life-threatening illnesses, such as GERD, upper respiratory, asthma, sleep apnea. They can range. But if you get an award for $20,000 for asthma today, and then a month from now you go in for 5 surgeries, and then you have another surgery, then you get diagnosed with something else, you can always go back to the fund to get an increased award, because you never waive your future legal right. So now that the fund has been permanently funded and extended, just like Richie said, you're not taking money out from anyone else. You're not taking money away from somebody who has cancer or anything like that, which many of you did not move forward on claims in 2014, 15, and 16 because of that. Other than non-economic loss claims for pain and suffering, because you could have 2 people diagnosed with asthma, one person uses a nasal rinse once a week, the other person had 5 surgeries, the VCF awards based on severity. So if you have this FDNY member who got $20,000 or $90,000 for asthma, and then 5 years later he leaves the department, on a NYPD, on a FDNY World Trade Center disability pension, I can amend his claim for loss of earnings, for an economic loss claim based on his disability pension. Also, if I have, I have many firefighter clients that will leave the job in 2004 due to, a neck or a back injury, and then they get diagnosed with a horrible bladder cancer. They reclassify their pension to an FDNY World Trade Center disability pension based on their cancer. I can go back to the fund for an economic loss claim again, to the claim and amend the claim for an increased award. So it's definitely benefits that you have to take advantage of, and you have to ask. You have to ask, am I entitled to this? You got to find out these questions, because you don't want your family dealing with anything and reclassifying if, God forbid, you pass away due to one of these 9/11 related physical conditions. Other than non-economic and economic, you can make out-of-pocket medical expense claims, but you never waive your future legal right. And just so I can be very clear with everybody here who's a first responder or volunteer, you can join the World Trade Center Health Program if you're sick or not. Survivors, if you worked in the zone, lived in the zone, went to school in the zone, you can only join the World Trade Center Health Program if you are sick. But for first responders and volunteers, you can join it even if you're healthy. That's added benefits, added medical coverage. You are with people that know 9/11 conditions and doctors. Take advantage of it.
So I wanted to just touch something on what Lee just said, which is you never waive your future legal rights. This is the exact, many of you know that we represent firefighters injured in the line of duty, and we sue the negligent building owner who violated the electrical code, and we can get money in court for their injuries. Once we settle a case or get a verdict in court, you can never go back to get more money if your doctor says, oh, you need another surgery, or you end up losing your career years later. But with the Victim Compensation Fund, you can always go back. So please don't let the thought, oh, I'm only going to get $20,000 for my sleep apnea. My wife complains about my snoring. It's not the money. It's getting you in line so that if, God forbid, down the road you get a life-threatening cancer, you don't have to then start the process. Because let's face it, you're going to be dealing with much more serious stuff than litigation. And let an attorney help you by getting you in the program now. And I just want to touch briefly on the coronavirus. I'd be a little tone deaf if we didn't mention this. Sadly, not a day goes by without one of our clients passing away, but we have already lost over 100 clients due to COVID. And in all of the cases, it was COVID for someone who already had COPD or already had asthma, or COVID to someone who'd had cancer and then chemotherapy just destroyed their immune system. So this is not a political issue at all. This is just me saying, please take care of yourselves until everyone is vaccinated, and talk to your doctor to make sure vaccination is right for you. But you got to wear a mask. You got to be careful. You got to protect yourself, because it's so heartbreaking to us seeing how many of our clients are passing away. I don't want to see that happen unnecessarily. So Jennifer Jimenez is a longtime member of our firm's family assistance team that, as I said, since we have lost nearly 1,500 clients already, we keep you quite busy. And would you tell us a little bit about the benefits of the wrongful death benefits specifically that the Victim Compensation Fund has offered?
Sure, absolutely. And good morning, everyone. So yes, the Victims Compensation Fund will provide compensation when someone passes away due to a 9/11 condition. And this is additional compensation on top of the personal injury compensation that an individual can get. The Victims Compensation Fund will give for different scenarios. For instance, they always give $250,000 for the decedent's pain and suffering and from them passing due to a 9/11 condition. In addition, the Victims Compensation Fund will also give $100,000 for a spouse, a surviving spouse, and for any surviving dependents. They will also give compensation for reimbursement of any funeral expenses that were paid out of pocket, as well as compensation for any kind of lost household services, such as yard work, driving someone around, cooking, cleaning, things like that.
And Jen, can that be significant, those lost replacement household services?
Oh yeah, the household services, the loss of it can definitely be significant. We've seen it. It ranges depending on the person's age, if there was how many people lived in the household. But we've seen numbers into the hundreds of thousands of dollars just for the loss of the household services, and that's in addition to the loss of the person and any additional benefits for any dependents or a spouse. In addition, they will also give compensation for loss of earnings for anything that the person would have earned had they still been alive and were able to work. So the wrongful death awards in themselves are very significant. And again, that's in addition to the personal injury compensation.
Now, you heard earlier, Jen, that we talked about a strict 2-year deadline from the date of death to register a victim compensation fund. And tell us what the special master did once Congress permanently extended the victim compensation fund in July of 2019.
Yes, so the special master of the Victims Compensation Fund engaged a window where anyone that has died, even if it's been more than 2 years, which is the standard rule that we have to follow, they have until July 29th, 2021, which is in about 4 months roughly, or less than 4 months from yesterday, in order to file a claim on behalf of a person that's passed away. So if, for instance, if someone passed away in 2011, if they try to make a claim now, they can because of this new window, which ends on July 29th, 2021. However, if someone passed away in 2011 and the family goes to make a claim after that July 29th deadline, unfortunately, they wouldn't be eligible.
Right, and I can tell you from firsthand experience that we knew about this 2-year deadline. And before July of 2019, when Congress permanently extended the victim fund, even my law firm, and we represent more people than anyone in the 9/11 community, we were sadly telling our people who were calling us, ma'am, I'm so sorry about your husband's death. There's nothing we can do about it. The deadline is strict 2 years. You missed the deadline. You know, we can help you in other ways, but not with the victim fund. Well, thankfully, now that the fund has been extended and the special master opened this window, we have been circling back to our clients who had called us, who we had told were time barred. I'm not sure that every law firm kept track of the people that they told that it was too late to make a claim. So if you know any widows whose husbands or any widowers whose wives died of a 9/11 illness, just make sure that they did take advantage and registered a claim. And if they didn't, make sure they know about the July 29th deadline, because this is a wonderful window that is open, and I'd hate for anyone to miss it. One of the things we haven't mentioned is that all awards are tax-free, which is also a really nice benefit. When Jennifer was going through this, she mentioned $100,000 for the spouses and each dependent. Generally, Jen, who are dependents? How old must they be to qualify?
So any dependent is obviously anyone that's a minor child. Any dependent could be anyone, it could be a parent, could be another child maybe who is going to college, so they're over 18. However, they're still dependent on their parents because they are going to college. Could be a parent that lives in the home that relies on the child to take care of them. So it's anyone that relies on the decedent just to survive. They're considered dependent and will each get $100,000.
James, would you take us through some of the sum up what you think everyone should be doing now?
Absolutely. The first and foremost, the most important thing you can do right now is preserve your rights to file a claim. Even if it's something you're thinking about, you know what, maybe I'll file a claim in the future. I know everyone's saying I should file now, but personally, I'm just not ready. You should still register. This preserves your right to make a claim down the road. And as I mentioned earlier, it actually preserves the right for your family to bring a claim on your behalf if God forbid something should happen to you. The second thing is, for members who were active duty on 9/11, you are fortunate in that you can get the notice of participation that Richie mentioned earlier, which will help prove that you were present in the exposure zone. But for people who were retired, you're going to need witnesses to say, yeah, I saw him down there. I saw her on the pile. We worked together on the bucket brigade. And as more time goes on, it's going to be much more difficult to actually reach out to these witnesses and actually have them complete affidavit forms for you. We have forms that are essentially fill in the blank forms that make it easy for your witness to confirm you were there. You should definitely, if you're interested, reach out to us. We're happy to help you with that. Any other evidence that you have, demonstrating that you were in the zone. You want to get that now. This way, you made it easier for yourself down the road should you want to file a claim. Also, Lee mentioned it earlier, and it's something that we can't emphasize enough. You must get a skin check. Richie emphasized it. That thing that you've been thinking about on your neck, you notice something that looks suspicious, please see a dermatologist. Skin cancer is quickly becoming the most common condition that we're seeing. And as Lee mentioned, even if it runs in your family, even if you soak a lot of sun, the law presumes that your skin cancer is 9/11 related.
James,
Also,
can I interrupt this for a second? We just got a question from one of our viewers here. We've gotten a lot of questions, by the way, so thank you for being so engaged today. Can you make a claim each time you were diagnosed with skin cancer, or is it just a one-time thing?
So that's a great question, and it depends on the type of skin cancer. Generally speaking, the fund will compensate for each type of skin cancer, and they group skin cancer into two types. There's non-melanoma, which includes your basal cell and your squamous cell, and then there's melanoma, which is more severe. So the fund will compensate for those conditions separately. However, any reoccurrence, let's say you get basal cell once and then it comes back in another location, they're only going to compensate for that one time. And awards for skin cancers range from between $90,000 to $250,000. So even though in many cases it can be a non-life-threatening and relatively non-severe condition where they just remove it, the fund will still compensate for it significantly.
Okay, so can we, the second to last line on this slide, I'm going to ask Jennifer to please, since you're in the family assistance team world and you're dealing with widows and widowers all the time, would you please talk to everybody about what's in that line?
Yes, so the line as it reads, get a will and healthcare proxy and update your beneficiaries. I cannot stress how important it is to get a will set up. When someone passes away, someone does have to get appointed as the head of the person that passed away's estate. And part of that process is having them go to a surrogate's court. If there is a will, we will file the will for them. In that will, it does say how the decedent would like their funds to go. And for example, with the Victims Compensation Fund, any compensation that would be going to that person will go to their estate and will go by the will. I cannot stress how important it is to get a will done. Make sure your family is taken care of. Make sure the beneficiaries that you want to benefit from the Victims Compensation Fund are listed in that will. We do wills for free in our office for our clients.
Hold on a second. Wait a second. What was that, Jennifer? I'm not sure I heard. Can you please repeat that?
Yep, I will be happy to repeat that. We do wills for free for our clients. So if you want to get a will set up, we will definitely get one set up for you. You just got to let us know that you do not have a will and you would like to set one up, and we will make sure that's taken care of for you for free.
All right. And by the way, we do it for every active and retired firefighter. You know, I love to tell this story about Keith Young. I know a lot of you knew Keith. He was the firehouse kitchen chef. He actually wrote a book called The Firehouse Kitchen Chef. And we got a call from Dominique at Fired Up for a Cure. Actually, she was in the foundation at that point, saying that Keith was terminal. He was up at Sloan Kettering. He only had a few weeks to live. So I went up to visit him. And I said, Keith, do you have a will? And he goes, no, I didn't. But I want my daughter, Kaylee, my 24-year-old daughter, to be the guardian of my other two children who are under the age of 18. And I said, Keith, it doesn't do you any good to tell me. We need to do a will for you, because I don't know what the surrogate court's going to do about asking a 24-year-old college student to now be the guardian of her two young children. He might not think that's the right thing, but you want that. So Dominique arranged for an ambulette to pick him up at Sloan, brought him down to the office. I went into the ambulette with 3 other people in my office. This is before Zoom. And we did his will in the ambulette. And you heard James talk earlier about how the Victim Compensation Fund can expedite awards if someone is deemed terminal. Well, Lee, would you tell us what they did for Keith?
The amazing thing that they did, because with Keith, it happened so fast, but they expedited his award and they were able to issue his award. And he was able to know that his family was taken care of right before he passed. So, you know, it was amazing, very high spirited, but the VCF and how they worked and how they rush for terminal clients is outstanding.
You have no idea what a burden that lifted off of him. And in fact, just as a sidebar, the three kids, their father, Keith, had invented this cutting board. I'm sure a lot of you know this. And he never did anything with it. He invented this cutting board for the firehouse. And the kids, several months after he died, took the cutting board. They went on Shark Tank. And they told the story of their hero father who died of cancer, leaving them because their mother had already passed. I should have mentioned that. And all four sharks put up $25,000 to launch their business. And that cutting board is now the runaway hit at Williams-Sonoma. Isn't that great? So every once in a while, there's a nice story that comes out of tragedy. So that's important. All right, I think it's also important to mention that we are only allowed to do wills for people in New York State. I know a lot of you are out-of-staters and you're asking about this. Just when you plan to come back up to New York, we'll do it. We're just so committed to helping you. It's a pleasure to represent the 9/11 community in general, and especially the FDNY members, whether they were active or retired. I want to thank all of you for tuning in today. If you have any other follow-up questions, just call us, send us an email. We're here for you. All right. Take care, be safe, and stay healthy.